Welcome back to another episode of the Hustle Nation podcast. Today, as always, we've got a real treat, and we're going to be talking a little sports. Mr. Andrew Petcash is in the house. Andrew is founder at Profluence. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Chris, Dustin, appreciate you having me on. Always good to sit on the other side.
You bet.
Yeah, likewise. And it's not too often we're talking sports, particularly Packers, before we push record. So that's always fun to hear when there's a Packer tie to one of our guests. So, Andrew, you're in sports. Tell us a little bit about Profluence and what you do.
Yeah, so came from the basketball world, grew up playing, had the opportunity to play in college, and then the name, image, and likeness whole Finanza went live 2020 first in California. Saw an opportunity, built a media property, and was able to sell that in 21 once it went federally live across all the states, and then found this real unique gap in the market where no one was putting content for the founders, executives, investors in the space. And so founded Profluence, podcasts, newsletters, socials, all the top content. That's the top of the funnel. And then we pushed it into a community. So we have a community of over 200 sports founders where mainly early stage, really helping assist them and grow. And then off that access, off that media presence, I partnered with a gentleman that's been in the private equity space for 30 years, and we launched Profluence Capital. So we're now investing back into the ecosystem. We've made 9 investments thus far, and have had pretty good success just because we're so deep in the space. So Profluence has become this umbrella of media community and fund, and so we'll see where it goes from here. But never would have guessed that when I first started it.
So let's backtrack a little bit. The first question I usually like to ask folks is, tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got here. But I'm curious, what role did sports play in that too along the way? I would imagine grew up being a big fan of sports.
Yeah, I played everything basically. And then basketball is just the most exciting, but I always joke around with brothers, friends, family. Like, man, I'm 6'4", I know you can't tell in the thing. So I got blessed with some height, and it worked well for basketball to get to the D1 level. But just needed to be 6'6" or 6'7" to have a chance at playing in the NBA, which is basically impossible. And if you look at the stats, like only like 4,000, 4,500 players have ever played in an NBA game. It's pretty nuts. It's needle in a haystack. Anyway, I should have probably played golf or tennis or baseball or sport that suited me a little better.
Still time for that.
No, yeah, probably not. I mean, I play them now, but to go professionally. So yeah, sports, big impact. And then it's nice to still be on the other side now. I explored coaching for a little bit right out of college, but definitely like the business side of it. And it's such a great industry now, growing a ton. It's becoming a true asset class. We're looking at 17% compound annual growth rate over the next 10 years. So it's a good time to be in the space, which is awesome.
So curious, as you were starting kind of your first media property in NIL in California, that's an uncharted territory, right? So that, there's entrepreneurs that start businesses, and then there's those that are starting businesses in spaces untapped. And, so just curious how you navigated that, kind of your mindset throughout that, because, it's not, I feel like a lot of times entrepreneurs, they might start a business, but it's like, hey, it's kind of more of a copycat business, right? Where it's like, hey, I've seen this business over here and we can just replicate it. So just curious kind of how you worked through that process.
Yeah, I think it actually goes back to my childhood. Both my parents, entrepreneurs, built their own companies, very successful. And so when you're sitting at dinner in normal families, like to be honest, I don't even know what a lot of them talk about. But for us, a lot of the times it's, hey, what are you seeing in business? What opportunities? What's things like that? It's very much, it's just in your blood. You go on vacation and you go to play mini golf and you see all these people, normal people, you go pay your $10. Our conversation is, okay, there was about 100 of us there. We're paying $10. How many is that an hour? Is this a good business? And so you just start to spot opportunities all over the place. And there's a word for it. I want to say it's like RAS, or reticular activating system or something, where if you see a red Volkswagen, you start seeing red Volkswagens everywhere. And so when you're growing up with that, I feel like I have a natural tendency to start to see opportunities. And when I saw California go live in NIL, it was natural to say, okay, not only one state's going to do it, because this is now going to become a competitive advantage for that state. Other states are going to have to do it to compete. Texas isn't going to allow, especially if you look at football or basketball, they're not going to allow California to have the edge, right? Or Florida or any other. Yeah. And so it was like, this is a legislative opportunity where it's one, but it's going to be all 50. And the easiest barrier to entry was to create media around it, because I was a college athlete at the time. And I can speak on this of, here's what it looks like. Here's how athletes are thinking about it. I know how to talk to coaches. I know how to talk to ADs. And so I just jumped on that opportunity. And then now it's cool because then Profluence was the next one. But part of our fun, like I'm constantly every day, what is the next opportunity? And now it's not per se me building it. It's some other founding team, but we're able to give them capital and help build them. And so it's great because I also have never been diagnosed with it. I think a lot of it's BS, but like ADD, ADHD, like I get bored with things traditionally quick. So unless I really love it, which was like basketball, and now this is great because I'm building one thing, but every day feels, it might be the same structure, but it feels completely different things. And it's just spotting opportunities and jumping on them. So I love the fund world, the investing in private companies, and I want to keep growing on that side and hopefully keep larger and larger assets under management and bigger deals. And we own a tier 2 soccer club. I want to get up to the bigger leagues at someday. So
that's awesome.
It's cool.
Andrew, with NIL as an investor, are you still in that space?
So I'm in it peripherally. So I helped Boston University, where I went and played, set up their whole NIL collective. So just to explain that, I'm sure a lot of guests don't know what that is.
Yeah, please do.
At these colleges, you traditionally had the athletic department, and then you had the boosters. And so if you're going to donate money, it's going to go towards facilities or sometimes scholarships. But with NIL and college athletes able to get paid, I call it a loophole. Some people in the industry don't agree with that word, but it's just what it is, is they created these NIL collectives that serve as almost charities or these made up businesses to put donor money, write it off as taxes, and then pay the college athletes so you can make your team better. And we won't go into the weeds on this today, but it's a whole nother hour-long conversation, fascinating about the mechanics and how it works. So part of the next opportunity is these college programs are going to come online. And what I say by come online is they're going to become available to invest in. They're going to become like how you have pro sports team ownership. That's where it's going next. How it looks, how it shakes out, how long it takes, no one really knows, but we want to put ourselves in a position when the University of Wisconsin football or basketball is like, hey, we want to take private equity money. We want to be in position to be able to do some of those. So that's where it's going. So we're looking, but in terms of investments in the space, all the companies built around it, it's too small of a market size.
When you talk to Dustin, it's Marquette University.
Okay. Yeah. I took a guess. I was like, all right, maybe I'll get it. But yeah, Marquette.
I like Wisconsin.
Yeah. So, NIL is obviously a huge topic. There's a lot of people with a lot of, quote unquote opinions about it. For on kind of one side of the coin, people are saying it's, between NIL paired with the transfer portal, college athletics has kind of changed forever. Curious on I was having just a conversation this last week about it. And, I feel like a lot of times because people are pulling those two things together, I think that's what's created the change so quickly. Just curious on what you see in college athletics in the next 3 to 5 years with kind of where we are today and where we're going.
So the good thing about the transfer portal is a lot of that has been driven by graduate transfers. So these 5th-year players that play 4 years, and then because they have from 2020, they have the extra, pandemic year that they can add on that the NCAA granted them. But that's gone after this year. So now you're going back to traditionally, unless you get hurt or you redshirt, which redshirting just sort of went away, right? You're going to have 4 years. So that will slow it down a little bit. But at the same time, it's going to keep increasing because you almost have this tiered system now. Okay, where can I get in? All right, so I'll just use BU, for example. That's lower mid-tier of D1 basketball. Okay, can I go from there, BU, kill it for a year or two, and then transfer to more mid-major, like high mid-major, an A10 school, right? And then can you go do well there and then move up to the power, I think they're calling it Power 5 now, they're including the Big East. Can you get to a Marquette? Can you get to Wisconsin? And maybe you'll get 10 grand at Boston U, you'll get 50 grand at University of Akron, and you'll get 250 grand at Wisconsin. And so we're going to see this shifting. And so there's going to be a lot of interesting things that play out, especially on the legal side of how these contracts are written. Are they long-term? The NCAA is going to start allowing, through these big media contracts, players to get paid. And so that's where the private equity opportunity we talked about comes into play, because if your team's winning, it's more payouts, which is more, can you put money in and get money out? So yeah, the next 3 to 5 years is going to be nuts, just like the last couple of years has been as well.
Yeah. Andrew, when from the outside looking in, I don't know a ton about this. I know enough as an avid sports fan. Right now, it feels like the wild, wild west. And I kind of predicted that this could get a little crazy, get a little hairy in some spots. It seems to me that there are some positives, but it also appears that maybe there are more negatives. That, like, you take a program like University of Wisconsin Green Bay that just got Doug Gottlieb, who I think is probably going to be great for the program. But then even if it is built up, it's never going to be a top tier program. And so they're never going to be able to offer the money that a Wisconsin, or insert any big name here. I guess what I'm getting at is, do you see a side or a case where this NIL stuff and this transfer portal could be devastating to college sports?
I think it could be for non-football and basketball. I think they'll always be fine. They're big enough markets. They're wildly successful in terms of media rights and media attention. Even looking at women's basketball, obviously Caitlin Clark was a big driver of that, but that's on the rise. And they do a good job on the social media side traditionally in those sports. So you grow up as a kid watching highlights of high school players and then college players, right? And so I think college sports has a ton of growth ahead, especially football and basketball. But you start to worry a little bit about, obviously, with the Big Ten, right? UCLA coming, their women's softball team or their women's track and field, they got to go across the country to play Maryland in a meet or a match or a game. It's not sustainable. It's not going to work. Where's the money going to come from when basketball and football subsidize a lot of these programs? Like when you look at Boston University, we used to have a line item that was field hockey, women's field hockey. That was one of the expenses under the Boston University men's basketball statement, field hockey. Okay, well, that's, I don't know what that number was, but I'm sure it was a little under $1 million. Good number. I mean, imagine now you give that to players. That's where it's going. Well, that's great. But now do you have a field hockey program? Where does Title IX come into this? Right. Yeah. And so there's a ton of nuance. And I think the Olympic sports, we'll call it, are at a lot more risk. And it's going to be who can step up and either donate money. I know wrestling was going to go away at Stanford, and a donor came in and put a ton of money to save it. So we'll see. Like, there's so much uncertainty. Like, I can give you what I know and the knowledge, but no one really knows where it's going, because everyone is sort of taking a guess. Even the legislators don't know, because they don't know how people are going to vote, what could change. The SEC holds a ton of power. So just honestly, if you want to know where college sports is going, watch the SEC. They'll sort of let you know. And their 2028 is the big year, because SEC has a lot of media rights and stuff coming up that year. And so we'll see what they do. But I don't know. It's a wild time. I'm interested to see what happens to the NCAA.
I'll just say this last thing. As a parent, the one thing that I have optics to that I see is, and you're starting to see it more. Dustin has kids about the same age in high school, where there are kids in high school that are transferring schools. Parents are moving so they could be in a better program, or they can be starters. And now it feels like, and I'm all for it. If you're good enough to go from D3 to D1 or D2 to D1, good for you. You should do it. But it feels like the first chance that someone gets benched and they're like, well, I don't like this program anymore, I'm transferring. And you see it like this vicious cycle over and over. I don't want my kids to be in a situation where it's like, well, we're not starting, we're transferring schools. And that's tough to see, because, back in our day, and I feel really old saying this. I told myself I'd never say that back in my day. You either earned it or you didn't. And I do see the case where it makes sense to transfer, but I just fear that this is going to catch on, and now you're going to see all these kids, like you're starting to see it now, where they're going to finish their career having played for 4 different colleges, or in some cases maybe 5, just because they got sidelined for 2 weeks with an injury, and now the coach doesn't like me or something. And that's the hardest part for me to watch, and I hope it all works out for the best on the business side.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that is coaches move around with no regard to what
It's fair.
athletes or families think. If they get a better contract, they get a better deal, they go, see ya, right? So, yeah, do I think 4 schools in 4 years is nuts? Yeah, but do I think transferring is nuts? No, I think you got to do what's best for you. And when there's real money on the table and this money can be life-changing, I mean, you're coming out, imagine coming out of college with, instead of most people going into debt, you're coming out, and I went on a full scholarship, and I had a little bit of a stipend that I saved. So I came out with just a tiny bit. Imagine coming out with 2 million going, okay, now I can take a risk, or now I can go get a job and have real good savings, or now I can put into a down payment of a house and have an asset. Like, yeah, I'm with you to a certain degree on that. I don't think you should be transferring. You should stick it out. Like, I thought about transferring at BU after my freshman year, and I was like, no, I'm gonna stick it out. It's a good school. Obviously, NIL wasn't around then, and then it worked out great, and we won, our tournament junior year. I played a ton, had a really good year. Was like 3rd in the Patriot League in 3-point percentage, and we would have went to March Madness if it wasn't for 2020 being the craziest year. So, but yeah, I mean, the transferring is interesting. In high school, it's much worse, to your point, but in college, I think it's acceptable to some degree. If you can get more money and better job, go take it.
To your point with the money, like if you look at the Live Tour with professional golf, I wasn't mad when Bryson DeChambeau and those guys took the money to go to the Live Tour. So, to each their own. It's life-changing money. Hard to judge.
Yeah. So,
well, the other thing that I think is interesting, if you compare it to business, we were having this conversation this last week, right? So when you look at NIL and transfer portal and things like that, I mean, the thing I keep hearing, right, is I'm afraid, right? Like, I'm afraid it's going to do this. I'm afraid it's going to do that, which is, change, right? Anytime there's change, people are going to be fearful, right? You can do the same thing for AI. I think then the second piece, though, beyond fear is, well, now we got to re-recruit players every single year. And every time I hear that, I kind of laugh. I'm like, that's business. I mean, you got to recruit your team every single day, every single minute. And yes, I mean, do I think it is a changing dynamic, and you may not have the players that will, but not if you I mean, I believe that the great programs are still going to be able to compete. Now, will there still be some players that'll chase the money? Yes. And can you be mad at them? No. But to your point, the coaches do too. I mean, we talked about UWGB, right? UW Green Bay. I mean, they had an excellent coach last year. He came in, he did a great job. He elevated the program, and he's gone, right? He went on to bigger, better things, right? Can you be mad at him? I mean, no. I mean, the reality is he's good at what he does. He wants to elevate. He's gonna move on, and he's probably worked really, really hard to get to that point. So, why would we be mad at him, right? But I do think there needs to be some things around it, just so that it creates some clarity. To your point, I think it would be certainly sad if a lot of kind of non-premier college athletics just went away. I think when I think about the general economy, Andrew, I'm sure you're seeing this and you're investing in companies, right? Like, former collegiate athletes, regardless of what sport they're in, are great talent in the business world, right? Because they know discipline, they know hard work, they know communication, they know being, whether it be part of a team or an individual, right? They have different skill sets. But so just, curious, just as you've been looking at a lot of businesses, investing and obviously growing your own business, what parallels you see between the two?
Well, it's cool. Our whole team is made up of former college athletes. So we're all former college athletes that have experience, I guess, kind of besides myself, although the first venture was more media than sports per se, I view it as, in other industries, whether running family offices, whether lawyers or whatever. Our whole team is former college athletes that have done a lot of things outside of sports, and then coming back to execute on the opportunity that is now sports and athletics and sports as an asset class. So there's a ton of parallels. And also as you start to get into more of the financial world, you get into the family offices and the RIAs and the institutions, a lot of the main decision makers and people you see are athletes. So it's not just the characteristics that you brought up, but it's also that connection if you've come from that world, because there's something very much to relate to. You can get into the locker room talk. You can connect dots very quickly because the worlds get super small, very, very fast. And it's great, to sit on, similar to how we talked about the Packers and Steelers for the first 5 minutes. We can relate. But when you have someone, and it only gets better as you get a little bit older and you care less and less about where you played in D1 or D3, you can start to, you build that bond pretty quick because you're like, you went through what I went through. We're cut from the same cloth to some degree, even if it was 3 years ago or 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 or however long. So it's a major advantage, I would say, to play college sports if you can, whether you are getting paid $2 million through NIL, whether you're just getting a full scholarship, whether you're a walk-on, whether you're D1, D2, 3, NAIA, JUCO, it comes in handy. So, I mean, even for us, our interns are all college athletes currently or just got done. I mean, we look exclusively in that space because relatable, and we have a pre-vetted approach of like, we know what you had to do and go through.
Dustin, you've mentioned that before when talking about applicants, that those athletes, those collegiate athletes, are the ones that stood out to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's for all those things. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's the person, right? I mean, but I think anytime you're looking at anyone in any role, it's helpful to know what they've gone through. The people that have had all easy their whole life, they tend to not have the grit. They tend to not have the ways to kind of break through. And when I was younger in my career, you'd always look for kind of that impactful moment they had in their life, right? That big struggle. And then you realize, some people may not have that, right? Where it's this monumental moment of a health scare or a family thing or, some traumatic event, things like that. But they've kind of created that grit through other things, right? And so, collegiate athletes are certainly one to do that. Entrepreneurs are another way to do that. It's finding those people that are comfortable with getting uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, something we joke about, because my brother, he played D1 too in Binghamton in New York basketball. We actually played each other 1 year in college. There was a crossover, which was super cool. But we always talk about like anytime we don't want to do something now, we're like, I can think back a few years to something that was way worse, like 5 a.m. workouts or going to study hall or tutoring or whatever it was. So it's a great thing to compare too. If you're like, man, I really don't want to do this document today, or I really don't want to go do whatever it is in the business world. You're like, this is easy compared to that crazy shit they put us through, at one point. I mean, it's really it's military training. I mean, the bottom line, games are, and I don't know if this is true for all sports, but for basketball, one of the kids on our team, he did it because he was just curious. Games were only 4% of the entire time we played, and play 32 games a year. So it's not insignificant, but of the entire year, I mean, it's everything else, right? It's all just training, right? Strategy, film session, and then you go perform or you go on your mission, right? So the military and sports, it's the same thing.
So Andrew, having the ability to have worked now with so many collegiate athletes and former athletes, what do you see when you compare either the businesses you've worked in or the businesses you're working with the culture? Because there's got to be a big difference between culture in juxtaposing those two things.
I don't have a ton of experience in the corporate world, so that's like a bad relatability for me of anything on that side. But from call it more startup, early stage, not huge teams, I mean, it's everything. You got your little pack of 5 to 10 or whatever it is, and you can really go, and everyone knows their role, especially if you can find good meshes, right? Like I was in college, I'm that knockdown shooter. I'm going to be smart on defense. Like I know where I'm a good leader. I knew where everyone needed to be. I knew how to keep, my coach would go to me to keep people, like where's their mindset at, and to keep us, good energy levels. And then, Javante, he's on the Spurs now. he's our guy that's going to go get buckets when we need it. He's going to not play as hard on defense. They're going to put him on it. You sort of know everyone's strengths and weaknesses. And that's what I see a lot, especially on these. You got to be more gritty, like you talked about. And it's, can you find the complements to each other? It's easier in basketball, right? You have a center and a shooting guard and you try to mesh it. In the business world, it's a little tough because your height, size, like that doesn't matter. But for us, it's, who's good more in the back end or operations, or who's more good out front and with people and relationships, right? And if you can get that, just like you can create special teams that win championships, you can really create special companies and projects that do really well. And so it's, when it clicks, it's just like when you have that team, you're like, we're going to be good. Like I remember my junior year, I was like, we're going to be good. And we ended up doing it. I feel that in our business even today, that same feeling of like, we're good, like we're built different, like that's sort of that like feeling, phrasing you feel internally.
So it's, as you think through the next 3 to 5 years, right? There's a lot of opportunity in sports. You're making different investments and things like that. What's going through your head now? As you say, you can't sit still very well. So in the next 3 to 5 years, what do you see on the horizon for you and your company?
Yeah, I don't sleep well either. Not just because my mind just doesn't, in a good way though. I do well. I meditate, fitness, wellness. I take care of myself well, which I think is super important. So I want to make sure I always keep that a staple, because that drive, if I don't do that well, it doesn't drive the business well. So that's something personally on the 3 to 5 years. I think about it a lot. I have some ideas. I have some goals. I have some things written down. It's ultimately, to me, can we be that central hub for the builders in sports? I call it the investors, the executives, and the founders. Can we go and create that where, let's say, Dustin, Chris, you want to start a company in sports. You're coming to Profluence first for your insights, for the media. Here's where to get the best conversations, the best insights, the best data, the best reports, whatever it is. And then naturally, it's like, okay, you have a good idea. Well, now instead of us writing smaller checks and needing other investors, we can go and really structure that and go put in. We could take a whole round, right? That's where I want to lead to. And we can give you the capital, but then we have the back end through the community to really help push you forward, because it's like any industry, but especially sports, very relationship driven, very network driven. The best tech, the best product doesn't always win. It's who has the best people and can get you in the right places and the relationships, right? And so we have that really stemming, and we are that spot. We are that build a box. And just like, and this is an ambitious type statement, but just like Nike is, when you go, okay, what's an elite apparel in sports? Nike, and they have that brand appeal. Okay, you're building a company in sports or a team or league, you're affiliated, you need capital, you need building or whatever you need. It's like Profluence is that brand of like, you want their money. You're going to have to come through them at some point. They're that Sequoia, they're that A16, using other industries like software investors. Like I want that to be Profluence, and how that plays out, how that evolves over 3 to 5 years. I don't know. 18 months ago, we were just starting this, and I would have been like, yeah, it would be cool to invest in companies, but I met the right people. It was the right structure, right timing. We were able to do it. So it's exciting though. I'm really excited. I enjoy doing what I do every day. So as long as I keep that, the rest will take care of itself.
Andrew, it seems from the outside looking in that there are a lot of current and former athletes, professional athletes, that is, investing, becoming builders, as you say, from Giannis Antetokounmpo, LeBron, Alex Rodriguez, Patrick Mahomes. They're investing in all sorts of things, from products to professional sports teams. Are you seeing more of that? And, kind of what do you see next in the space of builders in the sports world?
Yeah, the athletes are great because now they can give back into the ecosystem that gave them everything they had. I mean, the NBA players at this next contract, so not 2 or 3 years, there's going to be players making $100 million a year playing basketball, literally dribbling a ball, shooting in a hoop. They're going to get paid $100 million. It's ridiculous. And to some degree, it's just the market value. That's what they should earn. But it's like, okay, well, now how can you really go make an impact? These are mini businesses in themselves. Yeah. Right. I mean, you're doing $100 million a year. That's a massive. Like, if you could build a company to $100 million a year, you're going, shit, this is great. That's you as a personal business. Right. And so it's really interesting to see them start to embrace it, get smarter. You're not going to see, obviously they're making more money, but you're not really going to see them going broke. There's a lot more better people around them. They're getting smarter. There's a lot more access to information and technology. We have a handful of athletes that are investors in our first fund. It's awesome. They love it because it gives them a great way. Instead of them trying to go pick some companies, they can come in, we can teach them, we can run them through it, and we can give them a diversified portfolio across multiple things in sports, and then get them in other places. We can network them. And it's really good to see just the sophistication level. I think it gets really interesting in NIL and in high school as you go younger and these guys make more money. What's it look like when you have a college athlete, 17, 18 years old, making $1 million a year, $2 million a year, driving really nice cars and going and partying? Like, do they still have that drive to get to the pros? I hope so, because that's where still the bigger money's going to be. But yeah, it's fascinating. You're seeing them invest back into teams and leagues. You look at, we'll just use Giannis as an example, and I know his team really well. John Stern, that runs Improbable Media, done a great job. He has his whole own media arm off of him. And then Jay Williams, an ESPN guy, I know Jay, he runs his whole like investment side of their business. And so Giannis, very similar to how we think of Profluence, and we have media, we have community, we have fun. Giannis, we have media, we have fun, we have, our marketing, we have our foundation, we have all this stuff around you. And so the athlete sits in the center as the logo of the brand, but everything else. And it takes a big team to go execute that efficiently. Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Serena, Steph Curry, those are some of the most world class that have done it to perfection. Tiger Woods, Djokovic has done pretty good. Roger Federer has done amazing. Just to name, Naomi Osaka is an okay tennis player, but has built a crazy brand and media and documentaries and investments all off of it. So it's really cool. These athletes are businesses. Like, don't view them as an athlete. People go, oh, they're an asset, they're a product, which is crazy when you think about it. People say that they're businesses now.
Yeah. What about a guy like Thanasis, who's Giannis's brother, for those of you out there listening that have no idea who that is, or Patrick Beverley, both former Bucks, who are what I probably call C-list at best celebrities/athletes, but now they have budding podcasts. And Thanasis, surprisingly, is very, very good and very big. Is that the start of building, or is that not building yet?
I think podcast is the easiest barrier to entry for them because people want to hear what they have to say. And we've seen athletes. I mean, now it's getting saturated. There's so many athlete podcasts. And it's interesting because a lot of, to be honest, I haven't listened to any of them. I've never listened to Draymond Green's or Giannis's or Pat Bev's, but I've seen all their clips on Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is. So I see like the fascinating stuff, and it's awesome. And there's good money to be made off that because they can extend their brands farther now. So now they have a sponsorship deal with, I think Pat Bev has like Li Ning or Anti or one of the Chinese brands. I actually don't know that.
He's on the Barstool platform, I believe.
Yeah, he is on Barstool. But you can take those brands and stretch them across. Now you have another asset, right? Because now it's not like, hey, show up to this event or do this commercial. Now you can go, hey, come sponsor my podcast. So you have more assets to monetize, which is great. You grow your brand, more people know you. Pat Bev is like a C-list type player, but an A-list type personality and people that know him, right? And it's not for everyone. And it's interesting with sports, basketball and football, way more of that. Baseball, none of these guys do that shit. Hockey, rarely see it. So that's interesting. And it's a wild space.
One of the kind of underpinnings of a lot of the things you talked about, a lot of your success was kind of networking, relationships, connecting the dots. Just curious how you approach that, because it clearly isn't random, right? Like you talk about even like your capital side, the partner you brought in with experience, things like that. I think so often people kind of thwart their success because they're trying to kind of lift it all on their own. Just, curious how intentional you are about kind of building those relationships, building that network to continue to grow.
Yeah, my thing, and I believe when you come into the business world, obviously it's in my blood from my parents, which is great because I learned a ton at younger ages and, 14, going my dad's business, hey, we got to do X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. But it's who you come up with. I think you learn a lot over your first few years, or people go, learn, go do whatever, it's your 20s. But like, to me, that's some of the most important times. And this might change when I get a little bit older, but it's who are you coming up with? Who are you learning from? How do they do business? Are they transactional? Are they more relationship based? How do they view things? How do they view money? How do they view events, networking? And so I've been blessed to have really great people, not just my parents, but that have come around me, that have showed me ways that I think are much better. And so that's been awesome. And then to me, I want to go find the best people, right? I don't want to own, actually an NBA player, Thaddeus Young, who I've become close with, told me this. He said, I get presented tons of opportunities every day. He goes, but I don't want to own the whole pie. I just want to own a slice of a lot of great pies. And it's such a stupid little statement and metaphor, but it's so true. Like, I want to own a smaller slice of something great that you can bring the best people. It wasn't cheap to bring in a partner that's done this for a long time, from the sense of ownership. I gave up a lot, but guess what? With him, I got much farther. And it's this statement of, you want to go fast, go alone. That's what I did to start. I went real fast because I was by myself. And then as you start bringing on people, it's like, I want to go find the best. Well, how do you find the best? You gotta go out, you gotta explore. But where it really all starts, and for me, is when you have a media asset, you can reach thousands of people that all it takes is one podcast guest or one LinkedIn post or one newsletter, whatever it is. And someone goes, I got to reach out. And so for me, I've been truly blessed that almost, I'll say 97, 98% of everything I've done has been inbound to me. From billionaires to pro athletes to my partners that have come into the business. It's been, I put out interesting insights. I bring what you want and is helping you. I'm adding value to you. I'm adding value to you by creating insightful things. And you're coming back. And how are you adding value to me? Helping me start a fund, helping me, build community. And then it becomes us. And then it gets super fun, super quick, because then other people want to join. So, not all manufactured, right? A lot of it's just sort of happened, and I've been lucky.
I want to dive into that question a little more, because in the professional sports arena, getting access to and growing your network, or just networking in general, can be really hard to penetrate, because whether it's agents or executives or athletes, even former athletes, media folks, it is hard to get into that circle. And even then, a lot of people are very protective of the information they might have of a contact, or inviting you to meet this person or play golf with that person. Have you found that to be a challenge? And if so, outside of maybe what you provided already, what are you doing to continue to grow that? I know on LinkedIn, you're big on adding value.
Yeah.
So my role is part of it.
Yeah, my role on LinkedIn is 90% add value, 10% promotion. Most people flip it. It's every time they do something good, they're telling everyone. Well, now people start to not care. You sort of get that envy, or like you get that feeling like, I don't care what it is. Like you just sort of, even it has nothing to do with your completely separate business. So anyway, that's how I view LinkedIn. But for me, for example, I met another sports team owner the other day. Naturally, anyone is going to go, that is a female, that she can do a lot for me. That's a natural thing most people are thinking in their head of, she can do a lot for me. She has a lot of money. She has a lot of connections, a lot of network. She's in sports. She's global. But I view it as, okay, I know that, but what can I do for her? Because everyone else is asking what she can do for them. I've sent her 4 decks of companies. She's now diving deep into one she finds interesting. I'm texting her random things. She helped produce a movie a long time ago. I did a little research. You got to do a little research. I shot her a text. Hey, that was one of my favorite movies, which it actually was, which made it even better. And now I'm just I introduced her to 2 other people. I'm like, yo, I'm just helping her. Let me help her. Let me build her initiatives. And I know that'll come around, but it takes time, right? Because most people, their natural survival instinct, so I got to make money. You got to make money. Like, we bootstrapped this thing. We didn't do really well right at the beginning. And then it just starts really clicking, because now I have all these people. Anytime I text them or call them, they'll answer, because they know most likely that it's going to go both ways, and I'm not asking them for something. So again, I'm not perfect. I don't claim to sit here and know all the answers to everything, and I make a lot of mistakes, but that is one thing. And that was a really relevant recent example of just how I think about things, but it's how I was brought up in the game. The people that taught me that way. If I was taught the other way, I might have treated it completely different.
It's probably connected weirdly some way back to your parents, when they would have these conversations at dinner about just getting your brain thinking about business and the economics of things. And I think anyone that I know who's grown up in business realizes that, and kind of distill it down to this one thing is sales is based on relationships. The more relationships you have, the bigger your network, the more sales you typically have. I mean, not always, but
Yep.
that's a very, very common core value in business and business-minded people.
Yeah. So I want to give you one. I think you guys and the audience will appreciate this. So my dad's in the medical space, owns his own practice. And this is where discipline, he was a former college athlete as well, comes into this. Every night that I've been alive, he calls his patients and to check in on them. Every single night, him personally, he's done that since he started his business. And I'm assuming, he obviously still does it. But like no other doctors do that. No one does that. He takes care of people, whether it's the simplest thing to the most comprehensive. He personally has his assistants write up a sheet and he calls them, from a star city. He doesn't make sure they don't have their cell phone number because he doesn't want to deal with that. But he literally calls them and goes, "Hey, I just want to say thank you for letting me take care of you. What do you need? If you need anything, call the office." Then, some people ask questions. "Hey, I'm having a little pain, whatever. Hey, because I always remember when we were younger, we were going to basketball practice, whatever. He's like, he'd pull out the list. Like, "Hey, Andrew, start dialing for me." And we were always like, "No, like, but like, there's just like things like that. That's discipline. He's doing it every day of the work week. And then that goes a long way because the referrals, word of mouth. I mean, last time I talked to him, he said, I'm booked through a whole year. I need to do nothing, no marketing, nothing. It's all word of mouth because over however long he's done it, it's just that really carries."
That's incredible.
Care about your people. Care about your people. Care about your customers. Take care in what you do. And I just don't know why more people don't talk about that. More business leaders and more successful folks. But I love that.
And it's cool now because I'm in a position where I know enough where I can give him little things. So like he belongs to a country club and he likes to golf, and that's how he sort of dials back. He also his side thing, he coaches the high school basketball team. Like he's constant, like all day, every day type person too. So anyway, this is really cool, but he doesn't need to do it. But I saw this one time. I was like, because he uses ball markers for golf, and a lot of people use poker chips. I was like, what's it cost? $300 to print, Dr. Petcash with your phone number, oral surgery on a poker chip. And so we went and did that. And so now the whole thing at the country club is like they're everywhere and everyone uses them. And his advertising is because people love them as golf markers. And it's like, it's just cool, like now to do fun things like that. And we test things out. And it's cool when it goes now, like I can actually look at his business and be like, "Hey, do you think about this? What about this?" Again, those are, I don't know what most people talk about. That's a lot of what we talk about when we have, July 4th parties and get-togethers now.
Love it.
Great story. I love that when we can go deep into kind of how you've become the person you are. A lot of it has to do with your family, specifically your parents. Andrew, before we let you go, I'm curious, what do you see coming up next in your industry? A lot of what you do, it sounds like, is tech and also working with athletes and professional sports organizations. But outside of NIL, which I think we've discussed, what else is going on in the world of sports that you're excited about, or we should be excited about?
Yeah, sports as an asset class is a real thing. So again, it's becoming more democratized. So we love when it's through us, but like you should be having some money in sports is my opinion. Just with the growth, I mean, it's the most resilient asset class. It doesn't matter good times, bad times, people will spend. And we're seeing a lot of these larger private equity groups come into the traditional sports leagues, so the NBA and MLB, NHL. That's going to start to push downstream, like we talked about, even with college sports, but into these emerging leagues. And there's so many more opportunities now. It's the media, like sports media is the last form of live viewership in the world. So that's what excites me. And then all the tech, sports as a wedge is huge. When you look at companies like Whoop, that was a sports company, right? They started with just athletes, and now basically every day you see someone using them. It's a multi-billion-dollar company. And so those are the things we try to invest in and we look for. Call it sports as a wedge. Yeah, the teams, yeah, the leagues, the tech, like that's more sports tech, but we say sports as a wedge. Can you use sports? It's a great community. It's a great place to go from B2B to B2C or whatever order. And can it go larger? So that's what I'm excited about. The opportunities just get bigger and bigger, because now what used to be, hey, let's test out a technology in the military, maybe take it to sports, maybe take it to consumer. Now it's let's test out in sports, and now let's take it to everywhere else. So it's it's great to still be in sports, because the opportunity on the business side is brighter and more ripe than ever before.
Couldn't agree more. And you got sports emerging like pickleball and all kinds of other things. Soccer is continuing to grow. It's exciting.
Yep. Cricket, paddle, rugby, soccer in North America. Yeah, I could go on and on. India, massive place we have some deep ties to, and some investments coming up. So yeah, Africa's untapped with a lot of potential. Yeah, there's some we'll see some big ones over the next 10.
Well, that's exciting. Before we let you go, Andrew, tell our listeners where they can find you, maybe a little bit more about Profluence and what else you might have going on.
Yeah, the easiest place, LinkedIn. Andrew Petcash is I got a little cartoon image trying to stand out. And then the website's profluence.com. But again, if you go to my LinkedIn, everything's there. So keep it easy.
If you're in the tech space, sports tech space, you're a builder starting something, look them up, folks. For all the listeners out there, thanks so much for tuning in to another episode. We appreciate the ears. Until next time, peace.